Hey everyone, just before we jump into the episode, if you're listening to this and struggling to build pipeline through outbound prospecting, go and grab yourself a free access to my new prospecting course. It's got lessons on cold calling. It has the script that my last team used to go from 6 meetings a month to 60 meetings per month. I break the exact script down and I give you one of my AI tools so that you can build your own version of it. I have a lesson on outbound email, how to actually write that very first outbound email, teaching you the key components, and I give you examples of what good looks like. There's lessons in there on how to use video and voice note prospecting to cut through the noise and grab your buyer's attention. And then there's a whole load of other resources in there and lessons and tools. So if you're struggling to build pipeline, go and grab that now. There'll be a link in the video description. Anyway, let's jump into the episode. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Hit Your Numbers podcast. And today I'm joined by Bill. Hey Bill, how's it going?
I'm really well, James. How are you? Looking forward to our chat.
Doing good. Yes, likewise. I see you rubbing your hands together. It's very cold this morning. Just before we jump in and you kind of tell the world, you know, all of your experience, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a cyclist, is that right?
I am a cyclist and runner, really, yeah.
Okay, because I just made that assumption by looking at your WhatsApp photo, and this morning there was a fantastic deal on a Peloton, and I decided to pull the trigger and buy it. So, if you've got any advice for me today, I'm all ears. Otherwise, I'll ask my best friend ChatGPT, and I'd rather ask an expert.
Yeah, I think. Well, if you're doing it inside, good for you. I've got a turbo trainer that I certainly used a lot during lockdown when everybody was on. I don't know if you used Zwift before, but you probably won't.
My partner's parents got one. Like you just hook your kind of bike, take the back wheel off, right? You hook it up, and then it's kind of gamified, and you can do it with your friends.
And if it's a dynamic one or I forget the electronic one that when you go up a hill on Zwift, obviously it labours more, and you need to change down gear, and just consistency is key, I think, and. What is good when you're on inside, there's no way to hide cycling on a treadmill, right? I do, as I say, a lot of running. Running on a treadmill is not as good as running on the road. I don't think a treadmill runner is as good as a real runner, if you like. But
yeah,
it's better than nothing. But when you're on Peloton, I mean, there's just no excuses. So because there nothing in the environment that going to throw you off. So it's a good way of really doing some, sprint interval training and all that type of stuff. Judging what your functional threshold is, your FTP training, and that really tells you where you're at and helps you improve. So good luck.
Yeah, looking forward to it. A couple of years ago, it's a bit of I hate to admit it, but I spent a few £1,000s on a really decent downhill mountain bike, and the guys in the shop were asking me what trails am I going on, and am I going to take it abroad and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, I just want to ride this thing down the beach. I live 8 minutes to the beach on the bike.
Oh, right.
I'm not going to take this downhill. I just want to cruise along the beach, with a coffee and just chill out. And they laughed and looked at me very strange. And it's been on the wall ever since, pretty much.
Okay.
So I'm hoping this in the office. I've got no excuses to get out. Well, I don't have to even get out on it, right?
Well, no, absolutely, no excuses, as I say. But I love those beach bikes you see in California, and with those massive tires that are really built just for going over sand. But fantastic.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll pick your brains offline. Let's get into the conversation today. So today we're talking about startup, scale up, and then kind of building what we'd call an industry leading sales organization, right? And maybe as we go through this conversation, we'll talk about some of the challenges and the fun kind of journeys that you'll go through at all of those different stages. And look, we obviously, had a chat before, and we thought long and hard about where do we want to take the conversation. I think it'd be good to understand how do we instill belief and drive in maybe a struggling sales organization. Maybe they've just started, or maybe they've been going around for a little while and spinning their wheels, working really hard, not making much progress. How do we instill belief and drive and kind of help turn one of those teams around?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think well, James, in your experience, the belief in oneself and confidence in a sales environment is pretty fundamental to success, really. And it's very easy that once the chips are down and you're hearing more and more no's, and you appear to be treading water, that's when everyone's heads can can go down, where the whole atmosphere that a sales floor can lack atmosphere for people, feeling downhearted and feeling they're hard done by, and so that can be really detrimental to even the strongest sales teams. I've seen that ebb and flow over the years. So certainly, when I first joined Indeed back in 2013, for example, I inherited a fairly small sales team who were not similar to that really. Indeed was going great guns in the US. I think I was employee about 1,000 globally. So, I inherited about 12 people in London. And whilst Indeed was starting to make big waves in the US and making a name for itself and competing with a lot of the other key competitors in the online job market, Indeed just wasn't known in the UK, and clients didn't understand the model. It was quite complex. A lot of what we did was trading boards and doing marketing for the marketing team. And inevitably people were fed up and felt hard done by, because they were asked to hit certain numbers that they thought were unachievable, that no one was ever going to embrace Indeed in the UK. It was too complicated. It was a US model. All these things. And again, this will be no surprise to you, going in and observing what sales teams do. But I was hired to kind of fix a problem, and when I joined the business, fairly quickly, it was pretty evident what the problems were, and people just needed to look closer to home and be more accountable and make sure they were doing the right things. Because there's so many different phases in any sales process, be that a methodology that you use like MedPick or SAMA or whatever it is, right? It's all fairly standard stuff, intro, discovery, taking your client or prospect through that process. And more often than not, you can have the best salespeople who are phenomenal at gaining rapport from a customer and doing the research and saying things are relevant. But when it comes to, the close, or just booking a meeting, or requesting to meet other stakeholders, or getting the right product mix, whatever it might be, there can be a breakdown. One of those links in that long chain could come apart, and often it's identifying where their sticky points are, and assessing, okay, you're brilliant at this bit and you're brilliant at the end bit if you get there, but where you're really breaking down is this middle bit. Let's focus on that and fix that. And lots of things like that spring to mind. But certainly when that lack of belief kicks in the sales floor, it's kind of the beginning of the end, unless you stop the rot and make sure that culture comes through, that people are enthusiastic, that they're bullish, that they can take the knocks, because sales is hard. And one of my old bosses many moons ago used to say, every no takes you one step closer to your yes, which is true. But often you need to get through tens of no's in order to get that one yes as equally. So that sense of belief is really important in any sales org.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a couple of things we can unpack there. But you're so right. Like, sales is bloody hard, but that's why we get paid so much money, or we have such a big opportunity, right? I really struggled at school. Like, and some people sometimes probably pick up on things like typos or spelling mistakes, because I just didn't have the best start. But I'm now able to, 15 years later, I've built a great career, and have a lot of freedom now, because I worked really hard. I was bloody accountable. I felt like I was a couple of steps back from everybody. So I had to obsess and work that little bit harder, a little bit longer, work the weekends to learn, watch YouTube videos, because none of these like courses and external coaches really back then, right? So it is bloody hard. And I kind of ranted a little bit yesterday on LinkedIn about this. It just blows my mind that a lot of sellers have got all of these sales tools. Yeah, like I couldn't help myself, but like there's all these sales tools. Like when we started in sales, like I was calling out yellow pages, or like you'd have to get into work early and there'd be a queue at the printer, because you knew the first couple of data sheets that would come out would be certain territories, and they had like the best leads in or whatever, right? Or if you got stuck with like, I don't know, like the Portsmouth patch, there's like very small businesses down here versus like, London City and East, for example. So you would get in early and you'd queue up and you'd be KPI to make 100 or 150 cold calls a day. And if you didn't do it on Friday, there was a row of yellow cabs outside and your name was on one of the back seats. And now it's like, I don't know, like it's very, very different. And, there's just very small pockets now I see where there is that rep that reminds me of myself, and you probably see them. It reminds you of yourself earlier. They're hungry, they're accountable, they're gritty. They know there's tough out there, especially when we go through like these waves where we are at the moment. Like there's all this like just people still aren't doing stuff the way they used to. They're not like making excuses. They're just like, screw it. Like I earn 2, 3, 4, 5 times what people in HR earn or in finance earn because I got to do this stuff. Just got to get on and do it, right?
Yeah, there's certainly my career, and I have to say, I think to a degree it's generational, and and it depends on which businesses you work for. But there was increasingly less and less accountability in businesses that my career that in which I've worked, where particularly working for a big US tech company like Indeed, for example, where you're given all the tools at your disposal. That there is sort of world class internal and external training. I mentioned MedPick and Sana, all these sort of type things. You all have an Apple Mac, laptop. There are experts in sales strategy and in strat ops and in marketing. Millions of pounds of marketing investment, etc. So you have absolutely everything at your disposal to be successful. Yet there is certainly a sense of entitlement in business like that. Whereas, probably showing my age a bit, but when I had one of my first jobs was doing a paper round, almost as you said, whoever turned up at the newsagent first in the morning would get their bag filled with all their newspapers and could go home and muck around on a Sunday morning or what have you. And so we used to get there earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier. Me and sort of another sort of 3 or 4 chaps would be there at sort of 6 in the morning, half an hour before the shop opened. And that early bird that catches the worm sort of type approach is absolutely right. And some of the best salespeople I've seen, some I've interviewed that come across as being well educated, very polished, on paper look like your archetypal sort of enterprise sales rep, might be okay. But I tell you what, some of the best people I've seen are almost as you've described. Those who maybe haven't been that academic or haven't left school with the best qualifications, let's say, but because of that, they have been scrappy and they've been entrepreneurial in their very nature. They've gone out there and they've got it, and they've been prepared to roll up their sleeves and work damn hard for that. You can really see that grit that a lot of the best salespeople have.
Yeah. And, recruitment's so important, right? Like, I always wanted to try and find people like me. I think you also can't try and find everybody that's like you because people are different. But, I've always had this mentality that you'll never outwork me. Like, and some people, there will be people out there that do, right? But I've had this mentality where, like, when I was an SDR, when I was an AE, when I was a VP, now running this business, like I'm building some stuff at the moment, and it's actually got me running down to my office in the morning. As soon as I put the boy to bed, I'm literally sprinting back down here. I'm so fired up about what I'm doing, and I'm in here till midnight. I'm in here at the weekends. I'm still making time for the family and stuff because that's why I quit my job to start this business. But I just know, like, if I just do the 40 hours and I just sit there, I come over with the plate and I'm like, more, please. I'm never going to build success. And that's okay. I say to people, it's like, hey, Bill, like, if you don't want to go and build a massive career, that's cool. Like, if you want to finish at 5, go play tennis, hit the gym, watch Netflix, that's totally cool. Just don't come complaining that it's unfair or other people have got lucky. Those people, what you don't see is they're grafting, they're grinding it out. They've got that winning attitude and mentality.
Yeah, no,
make a
absolutely.
decision.
Yeah, no, completely. And I think to a degree, I was blessed early in my career, being a recruitment consultant at the S3 Group, and I think one of the things that people don't necessarily understand about being a recruitment consultant, particularly within the IT sort of tech sphere, is actually it's the salesiest job that I have ever done myself. And it's bloody hard work. And inevitably, in terms of the hours that one needs to work when you're reaching, sounds all obvious now, right? But job seekers, candidates who are looking for jobs, they're probably less inclined to pick up a call between nine to five when they've got a job. So you're either calling them first thing in the morning, but more often than not, you're probably calling them in the evenings. And when I lived in Brussels for a couple of years in Belgium, we were still in the office until sort of 7-8 o'clock because we were banging out those calls, speaking to candidates, and that was just commonplace. If you didn't do that, you weren't going to succeed. That was pretty clear. But that sense that you describe of waiting to get into the office is a phenomenal feeling. Probably when I've had that most, I'm digressing slightly, but when I had that most in my career was when I joined eFinancial Careers, where I was for about 7 years before Indeed. So it's a financial services job board. And I was tasked with building the Benelux market, so Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. And so that was my first step into sales leadership. When I became a player coach, essentially I built up so much opportunity that I needed to hire people to manage on my team. And when I was at Reed, they have a motto which is love Mondays. My God, I love Mondays at eFinancial Careers. On a Sunday night, I was almost struggling to get to sleep because I was so excited. Because I knew when I got into the office on Monday morning, I had all these calls I needed to arrange all these meetings for my next 2 days in Luxembourg in a couple of weeks. And on each of those meetings, I knew I was going to close probably, on most of those meetings, I was going to close some business. I had all this pipeline building. I could see the pound signs from the bonuses and commission I was going to be earning. That was categorically the most exciting time, certainly as a salesperson myself in my career. And that was all due to, I have to say, bloody hard work. Me pulling my finger out, building strong pipeline, getting organised, it was a phenomenal time in my career.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, you have to be passionate about what you're doing. If you're not, well, one, you'll have a pretty crap time, and also it'll come across when you're selling. But prospects, buyers can tell if you're not super fired up.
Yeah,
there's lots of sales, but sales also is like a transfer of energy. If I get a sense that you're really passionate about the problem you solve, and you've got evidence and proof points, and you can clearly articulate it, we're trying to get a prospect to get the job done differently. They're always getting it done. Maybe not to the best way, but they're getting it done. If we want to get them to change, we have to fire them up, right, and build confidence. And we'll shift gears in a second, but just going back to like the instill belief and drive. Again, like when I became a VP, nobody said I wasn't again in that position where like, hey, here's like a program of like how to recruit, how to have tough conversations, how to build OKRs, how to run a forecast. I just learned this, made a load of mistakes, probably pissed a load of people off, all of that kind of stuff. And one of the things I learned through like reading and just like building a network of other VPs that I could ask questions to was like really get intimate with your people. Like if you want to instill belief and like help, drive change, you have to really understand them. Like, what are their needs, wants, desires? What are they like outside of work? Why are they doing this? Like, why do they make 100 cold calls a day? Why do they get punched in the face all day long? Why do they keep moving forward?
Yeah, what makes them tick?
Yeah, exactly. And if as soon as you can do that, then you can help them like build a plan that drives them. Like if you say, hey, look, you sounds like you want to buy a house, means you're gonna need a big down payment. I'll come back in 30 minutes. Let me just go and build like a little calculator for you. And go, right, well, you need like a 50K deposit. I've just done some maths, and all you need to do is make 87 cold calls a day. If you do that, you'll build enough pipeline with your conversion rates and the commissions over the next 7 quarters. You'll have that 50K. And they're like, dude, I'm fired up. And then every now and then you have to just reinforce it. Like, come on, dude, like we're doing it for this house, right? As a manager, my job is to like inspire you and hold you accountable and develop you. And it's like, these are the little tools that going and spending £100,000 a year on Gong and like, all these other, bells and whistles that, we're in these WhatsApp groups, everyone obsesses over. These are the tools I'm talking about, right? Like the Google Sheets or the Word documents or like the fag packet maths you do with them in that meeting room when they're down. Those are the things that can help people drive forward and also like just give someone a pat on the back every now and then and say, dude, you can do this. Like, go listen to those last 3 calls that you booked last week. Those were world-class cold calls or discovery calls. Go listen to them to reinforce, I can do this. I'm just going through a rough patch. Like, is there anything you would add to that? Anything you would maybe kind of agree with?
Well, no, I agree with all that, certainly. Do you know what it really made me think of is spin selling when you're speaking to a customer, because it's all about that end, that needs payoff at the end, right? So it's not about the implications, turning this around for coaching a salesperson. The implication is they're going to earn this 50 grand. Now, money in itself, I guess, doesn't serve a purpose. It's what you need that money for, as you said, deposit on the house or what have you. You know, that's the needs payoff. So really aligning that to what makes an individual tick is really important. There was a chap who joined Indeed, who I hired, who was Gumtree before. And I went out for a couple of drinks with him when he first joined, and it wasn't my doing, but he was very explicit that what he wanted to do was he really sort of opened up to me, considering we just met, but he really wanted to get engaged and propose to his girlfriend. And in order to do that, he wanted, surprise, a lovely engagement ring, diamond ring that he could buy her that was going to cost him, I don't know, 10 grand or whatever it was. And that was his needs payoff, that he was going to motivate him to go through those 87 discovery calls and hear all those no's and do all those demos. That was absolutely what drove him. So completely agree with that. I mean, one talks about motivating a sales team or motivating an individual, and then there's a certain train of thought, which I would agree with. You can't motivate. I can't motivate you to do something, James. What I can do is hopefully tap into your own personal what motivates you as an individual, and you motivate yourself. And so it's a slight nuance there, but it's really about sitting down with people, asking what they want to achieve. What ultimately are their own, I guess, OKRs and KPIs, and they want to set themselves to achieve, whatever that holy grail is in their life or their career, and work back from that. And it's certainly in recruitment terms, or in any sales role really, but but I think recruitment's quite simple. Is you need to earn a certain amount per annum, to earn decent money and not get fired, right? And so you need to do so many placements a month or a quarter in order to achieve that. Now that depends on what patch you're doing. If you're placing more junior tech support people, then maybe you need to do 5 placements. If you're placing some ERP, SAP sort of type people, maybe that's 1 or 2 placements a month, because the earnings are higher. And backtrack from that. So how many interviews do you need? How many candidates do you need to present to the client in order to achieve that amount of interviews? And therefore, how many candidates do you need to speak to qualify their CVs, and how many job ads do you need to post in order to attract those candidates in the first place? So it's I hate that phrase. It's not rocket science, but it is fairly simple mathematics when you reverse engineer and work out at the beginning of that funnel basically what effort should people be putting in, and then you can focus on honing their skills, making sure that they're accomplished and professional and come across well on the phone.
So we've built the leading skill optimization platform with 400 plus sales lessons, 12 courses from prospecting all the way through to late stage deal negotiation and more, one-to-one sales coaching and AI sales assistance. And I want to give you 7 days free access to the platform. The reason I want to do this is because nobody gets a degree in B2B sales. And after training and coaching hundreds of sales reps and teams in the last 2 years, most haven't mastered critical selling skills. And it's preventing them from being promoted, earning great money, and building a great career in B2B sales. So go to therevenueenabler.com, grab a free trial, and join hundreds of salespeople that are closing their skill gaps and mastering sales. There's a link in the video description. I'm looking forward to getting you set up. Give me a shout with any questions. Yeah, 100%. And that teases up really nicely for like the second part that we want to talk about, which is like scaling up, maybe focusing on enterprise, maybe breaking into a completely new segment or region, and all of the pressures that come with recruitment, people, retaining culture, all of that kind of stuff. Maybe we can jump into that. And I think what you're also talking to there is, as salespeople, we get promoted usually because we're good sellers. We've got good selling skills around discovery, value articulation, negotiation, that kind of stuff. A lot of these are like good, like leadership skills as well, right? Like if you're having a one-on-one, like being a good listener, doing good discovery, playing back what you hear, and like you mentioned spin. Like I'm going to digress really quickly. It took me 8 years in my sales career to get proper training. I joined BT, like an actual large business. I've been in scrappy startups my whole career, and they sent us away for like 2 or 3 days for Huthwaite spin selling. I've still got the folder somewhere down there, gave me a massive pack. Anyone listening to this, if you invest in your people, they keep that stuff forever. That thing's like nearly 10 years old, and I still, use it to this day. And they taught me this framework called ICE: identify, confirm, and expand or extend. And it's a really good communication tool. When I'm identifying something in a sales discovery conversation or in a employee discovery conversation, I want to identify something, maybe a challenge, confirm that I've heard it correctly so that I'm not thinking about it differently, but also showing the prospect or my employee that I'm actually paying attention to build credibility and trust. But I'm curious, so I want to learn a little bit more so I can make a diagnosis and like prescribe a solution. So I'm like, hey, can you just tell me a little bit more about that? Why do you think that's happening? Or why do you feel like we're not getting people to pick up the phone? Or do you see what I mean? And it's like having these little tools in our back pocket that are sales tools in here, not, dashboards or whatever. Like these are the things that actually help us. I guess, you're going to talk about it next, but how do we go on that journey from, very early stage startup? Now we're in that scaling up mode and we need to take over new things. Maybe you could talk to that.
Yeah, absolutely. But certainly what you were, just to reinforce what you were talking about, it's just getting back to basics and doing those fundamental sales processes correctly and just well is absolutely key. Yeah. So look, when I joined Indeed in 2013, I was there for 11 and a half years. Grew from, as I said, pretty much on the cusp of a startup and scale up. I would say, depending on what one's definition is of a startup, but I must have had about 12 salespeople for UK, and I managed France as well for the first 2 years. And then we grew rapidly, yes, in the UK, but many other markets as well. Grew rapidly over the next sort of 3-4 years in particular. And I built that small team of 12 to 400 headcount, over the next few years. Now, clearly, that took a lot of leadership skills, a lot of newly acquired skills for everybody, because we were taking the business from that startup scale up to something entirely different in the market, from a small scrappy business, in Indeed's case, that no one really knew much about in the UK. No one knew about the technology behind it. Just scraping websites, indexing them, aggregation, CPC based CPA models, which all sounds fairly old hat these days, but was certainly new back in 2013 to people in the UK. So how do you take a business that, or a model, let's say, that is competing in a well-established industry, the online recruitment space in this case, and to make them the behemoth that they are today. Now, clearly, that takes a lot of, as I say, going through those gears, those sort of developmental pains, really, to completely adapt the business. So I inherited a team, close knit bunch, who worked together for a few years prior to Indeed as well. So there was that. Yeah, there was that good sort of local office London culture, but there, as I say, there were things wrong with it as well. Probably a bit too much play, not enough work, I would say. And how do we professionalize that and take that on to a much bigger business? So that was certainly an exciting time. It was about being more granular and focused, and just really looking at where the opportunity was for the business. So we were fortunate that Indeed was acquired by Recruit Limited, a Japanese holding company, which allowed the business globally to invest more in marketing, which obviously helped kickstart the profile of the business. But as I say, me and my team, we were the real sort of boots on the ground, educating the local market by treading the boards, going out there, meeting customers, telling them about a new way of working in the online recruitment space. When I joined the business, it was very much sort of enterprise level companies, and initially in the UK, because the Indeed's model works on, or certainly does when it sets up a new market, works on aggregating the jobs from the largest employers. That's how they get all their content initially. So it follows that they go to those enterprise businesses first. But as we scaled and grew, it was clear that there was much more opportunity actually, within the mid-market space and SMB. I forget the precise percentages, but roughly 99.5% of businesses in the UK have fewer than 10 employees, whatever that is, but certainly in the SMB space. So whilst there are some large enterprise customers inevitably that represent huge revenue opportunities for a business like Indeed, they're few and far between, so you can't depend on those. So, but it was a question of initially segmenting, portfolios of the salespeople that are on board. So initially, the people, they would just scattergun approach, just thinking, oh, there's Amazon over there, that represents a good opportunity, or what about B&Q, or what about, so making sure that everyone had defined patches made up of certain industry segments. So still today, in the UK, Indeed's most successful teams are the likes of healthcare. So I built up a healthcare team in London, retail and hospitality, logistics, including Amazon, of course, and all the businesses that feed off a business like Amazon. So that didn't exist when I first joined. So it just allowed people to be laser focused on, okay, this is my patch. Maybe if I work with Bupa, probably their needs are going to be very similar to Care and Bupa Care and other companies within the healthcare sector that I'm working with. This all sounds pretty obvious stuff right now when I think about it, but at the time, as I say, it was a complete mishmash in everyone's portfolios. And then when we got more and more granular is when we started moving into other size business segments, as I say, so mid-market and SMB, which would be served very differently. Inevitably, an enterprise customer, once you're up and running with Amazon, it becomes how do we you've done the land, how do we expand that business? How do we retain that business and grow it? And then there's more of a customer success sort of retention, anti-churn approach to that account. So you might have a few people on big businesses like that, versus SMB, which is all about acquiring much smaller businesses. And it's, I wouldn't say it's a stack them, sell them cheap and stack them high sort of type approach, but obviously the numbers volume game is going to be far more important, reaching out into market and developing those new accounts, and they will inevitably grow to be those mid-sized businesses of the future. So it was really looking at every segment and every industry sector in a slightly more granular way. Whilst there are similarities, inevitably, the way that Amazon hires and constructs its whole talent acquisition engine is very different to a florist on the high street that's looking for one person every now and then. Yeah.
And that conversation's so different, right? Like my last business, we sold an employer branding solution to Amazon and to like other very large businesses. And when you would sell that compared to a company that's got, I don't know, even 1,000 employees compared to the 1.6 million that Amazon's got, completely different. The conversations are very different, right? And what I'm hearing is you kind of went through there, it's about, well, when we're at that kind of really startup-y kind of phase, even though Indeed was this like beast in the US, A lot of startups I've worked at, nobody's known who we are, what we do. They're like, hey, I always thought this was a spreadsheet thing. So you're in education mode. So you got to go out, you got to educate people, you got to win over, some of these big accounts to get that recognition. But you're not going in and saying, hey, come and buy this AI tool. It does this. Like, hey, our kind of talk track was almost like, back in the day, you would literally print off your CV. You would walk into the local shop and say, hey, have you got any jobs? Can I leave you a CV behind? Now you just go online and you look at someone's careers page, or you look at couple of websites, and if it doesn't scream, hey, come hang out with us, you move on to the next. And that was how we kind of approached that conversation, because we needed to challenge the status quo, which was people just put a job advert up and just assume everyone's going to run for it, right? And that might work if you're a massive TV kind of brand, but if you're a business that nobody really knows of, you have to educate them. So we used that as part of our strategic narrative to talk about the new way of doing things. So you're in that mode, and then when you go into that more scale up mode, it's like, actually, now we've figured this out a little bit, we now just need to clone that and put it onto different verticals or segments. And like you said, you have to tweak it sometimes. Like when I went from Staff Circle to CNET, I took the exact same playbook. I just swapped out some of the variables, and surprise, it worked. I just had to tweak it a bit. And I guess that's what you're talking about, is you put the grown up pants on, right? You take that, you tweak it a bit, and then you just go out and replicate it. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Clearly the manner in which an Amazon will make buying decisions is quite different to even a mid-sized business of the likes of, I was going to say Debenhams, but that's probably not what he said. But a retailer like, I don't know, John Lewis, let's say, and inevitably the hoops that one needs to jump through in order to sign off some sizable £1 million sort of type deals is going to be quite different to signing off a 50 or 100 grand type deal. So taking a sales org through that process, and the products that you're positioning with your customers don't change, and maybe some products may be more relevant to certain size businesses than others. You mentioned employer brand might be absolutely more relevant to some of those bigger employers, as opposed to that florist on the high street where brand isn't really going to come into it. But it's how do you go through that entire process? I would say networking one of those accounts initially. If you look at the staffing world, so in recruitment, it's quite clear that if you've got a smaller recruitment firm, probably it's James Bissell, recruitment company. It's going to be James Bissell who's going to be making those decisions. And any deal he signs is going to be coming out of his back pocket, and very personal to him. It's probably quite simple to get through to the true decision maker there. If you're looking at a bigger staffing firm like, I don't know, Hayes or Deco, Manpower, a company like that, inevitably you're not going to be dealing with Mr. Michael Page. You're going to be dealing with people in procurement and in their talent acquisition team, and in marketing, probably finance, and so knowing how to coordinate an account like that versus a James Bissell sort of smaller sort of 20, 30 person firm is going to be quite different. So even similar patches are quite different. RPOs we worked with a lot at Indeed that sort of transcend both that direct employer and sort of staffing firm, work very differently again. That they are very metrics driven, data driven, as Indeed is. So from the get go, that's a good thing because you're speaking the same language to a degree. But the outcomes that they desire and need to work successfully for their customers is very different as well. So again, how do you translate those products and those outcomes? Which are the levers and the buttons that you must press to really make them sit up and listen?
Yeah, 100%. And you mentioned you went from 12 to 400 people in the org over that journey. We get a lot of different people listen to this. I will have an SDR text me and be like, hey, love that episode. And then I have a founder, I have a CRO. So I think this one's more for that CRO, SVP kind of GM kind of question I've got for you, which is, you're now like the market leader, right? Or you've built a really big business in the UK or in the Europe or whatever, right? And people know who you are, and as a result, you've now got a hierarchy. You've got layers of leadership that sit underneath you, and you're now really working on big picture stuff and just driving, and directing the ship. Some organizations I see do a really good job of like the CRO like spends time every now and then with the SDR organization, making a couple of dials just to see what it's like out there, keeping their ear close to the ground. Sometimes they go out on sales calls, like with a rep out to see a customer. Like, what's your point of view? What's your approach to, hey, we've now built this beast. We're well known. Now we need to continuously kind of professionalize the business and make sure that we're always doing the right things, because we are now, public figure. We're always, everyone looks up to us. How do you keep your ear close to the ground when you've got all of this stuff going on?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think inevitably one of the dangers of working for a big, US tech firm, as I did indeed, is you become so say institutionalized, which is probably true, but probably not relevant to this conversation. But you become so internalized in terms of the inner machinery, the inner workings of a beast like Indeed, that you're constantly pulled into meetings, internal meetings, more and more with other stakeholders. Inevitably, if you've got an org of 400 people, you get more and more people problems. Inevitably, so HR becomes increasingly an important stakeholder for you. It could be finance, marketing, obviously customer success, sales strategy, all these other areas. It's very easy to get almost bogged down by the C-suite and your sort of board level sort of type conversations, and become further removed from the coalface, and actually understanding what's happening, on your sales floors, what those conversations mean, how the business is changing and evolving, what customers are ultimately saying, and what their needs are. Whilst it's challenging to manage a busy diary like that, it's really crucial to make sure you don't lose that edge and that understanding of what's actually happening in the market. So I would certainly do my best, probably not as much as I would have liked, but to jump on calls with salespeople. Seniority didn't really matter to me. Inevitably, I would attend face-to-face meetings, probably increasingly when we would invite larger enterprise customers into the London office at Indeed, to go and meet them, shake their hands, understand what they like about working with Indeed, where we could be doing things better. Often with these sort of thought leadership sort of type events that we would host, really important to make sure you don't lose that ability to position the product yourself. And I certainly wouldn't claim to be able to position Indeed as well as a junior AE who'd been doing that for a couple of years, actually having those conversations with people. I wouldn't know how to direct a customer necessarily around the Indeed website and all the bells and whistles that they need to consider. At a high level, clearly, strategically, I'd be able to impress upon them the importance of the certain elements and employer brand and being job seeker first and all these things. So I was constantly pleasantly surprised and really educated by some of my more junior sales team members when they would go in and talk about all those things. And it was very sort of eye-opening for me. And you'd see how a customer would react positively or negatively or have questions around those things. I always used to find, also during my time at eFinancial Careers, pretty much every single client meeting I had, particularly face-to-face in those days, there would be a question I wouldn't know the answer to. And I would be unquestionably the expert in the Benelux market for eFinancial Careers. But there would be one question where a customer would say, can I do this? Or how does one go about that? Or would you recommend? And, inevitably that would be, I don't know, but I'll find out and I'll come back to you on that. And so constantly, I guess, being humble oneself, being, genuinely sort of, empathetic and understanding that your learning needs to keep on continuing, and to keep in touch with that is really important. And it's important to be credible for your sales team as well. If you're leading a sales org, you go into a meeting and you haven't got a clue what you're talking about, again, that whole business can come crumbling down pretty rapidly if you're not careful.
People look up, right? Nobody knew, like, no AEs or SDRs start looking down at like the person that does the database cleaning. They look up at the CRO. They're like, "What? That's why I'm hustling. Like, I want to get to that stage. I want to unlock all these things with the compensation that comes with that." You run into a meeting and like you don't set an agenda, but then you go to your reps in an enablement session. Hey, we need to be setting an agenda so it's clear what the customers get. Right? It's all these little things that can really kind of impact your brand internally, your reputation. And what I'm hearing there from you is that if I'm hearing it right, like I 100% agree, like you're not meant to be the smartest person in the room. Like if you are, you've probably done a really bad job at recruiting. Like whenever I hire AEs, I'm looking for someone that could absolutely bury me when it comes to like putting meetings on the board, or like their win rate is going to be twice mine. And if I can get a team of those people, like I'll be okay. So I need to recruit really well.
Yeah, completely. I often say, it's not quite the right phrase, but always hire somebody that you feel threatened by, if you like.
Yes.
Somebody who's going to put you under the microscope, where you think, bloody hell, they're shit holes. Is this going to expose me? You can feel that sort of imposter syndrome sort of kicking in somewhat. But I've never shied away from that. In my career, I hired some brilliant people that already brilliant before they joined the business. And if you're doing that in the right way, if anything, that elevates the whole org, that elevates you, and you're standing up as well. So that's absolutely really important. Never shy away from hiring really, really good people.
Yeah, I remember, really quick story. I was in the Caribbean maybe 5 years ago. When I was building Staff Circle, which is HR tech business. I remember sitting outside at the airport waiting for our flight with my partner, and got someone had applied for a job through the website, and it was like our biggest competitor, and these guys have raised, I don't know, 100 million or something like that. CV came through and I said, wow. Like if I'm VP now, but if I was AE, like we would go toe to toe and it would be a sweaty competition every quarter. I need to hire this person, where most people would think, oh, like I don't want that person to come in, and I'm still selling a little bit because we're still startup. I don't want them to make me look bad. I'm the VP of sales. I'm part of the executive team, right? And I'm just like, dude, this person if I could get this person and he could help me make everybody else like that, I'm going to be on the map, right? And I'm going to get a promotion. I'm going to look like the hero in the business. And my job is just to find really good people. And then, like you were saying earlier, build a good layer and then just delegate out. But you have to trust those people that they're going to do it at the same level, or if not a better level than you would, because then you can take a step back and think big picture, be strategic. Yeah. Let's go take over this. Let's go do this. Let's go make this twice as good, right? So a lot of this stuff, it's the unsexy stuff that we have to talk about, which is you got to be world-class recruiter.
Yeah, I mean, hire good people and get the hell out of their way, I've certainly progressed as we'll have, my career, where probably I could have been accused of micromanaging when I was younger, and asking a rep to send me an email they were going to send to a customer so I could correct it before they sent it out, and all those sort of type things. And over the years, I've got better at delegating and also trusting people I have hired. I've hired them for a reason, so let them crack on with it. And that is absolutely crucial. And so you say hiring. I've had myriad interviews over the course of my career. Interviewing people to join my business. I mean, and I think it's. If I have a superpower, a natural superpower, it's probably being a good judge of character. Certainly in an interview type scenario, I like to think I've rarely been proven wrong, and often people would come to me and just saying, "Bill, what were your thoughts on that?" And I would normally come up with some point that they hadn't necessarily considered, which would sway their opinion one way or the other. But hiring well is is crucial. The amount of people I've interviewed, quite a few referrals over the years, actually, who on paper, sound the bee's knees. They come from a similar background, which can often be a problem, of course. It doesn't help your, the diversity of the business. But they're polished. They understand the product well. They may have worked for a competitor. They're recommended by a couple of people who currently work for, say, Indeed. But when they come out with too much internal vernacular that they wouldn't have heard otherwise had they not been, prepped to the nth degree, and then have no questions for you at the end of the interview, I'm saying, wasting my time.
Yeah.
And you would certainly expect somebody who's referring in a friend or ex-colleague of theirs to have a conversation with them and prep them as best as they can for the interview. But it shouldn't be as one-sided as that. You want them to ask interesting questions that they thought of off their own bat is really key. So getting that right is important. And I've also hired and interviewed people in the past that probably haven't been that diverse, that have come from a similar background as me and look and sound like me, which usually isn't the right approach. So hiring is I think one of the hardest but most important elements of building a successful sales organization.
Yeah, and the whole way through, right? And that's probably a good way for us to kind of wrap up the show. If you're thinking about startup, those first couple of hires could make you or break you, right? So recruitment's critical there. And then in your world, I've never built a sales organization of 400 people, and probably never will. Now I run this business, but my gut tells me is you had to treat recruitment just as important in the early days as you did when you were scaling to a huge organization, because a couple of bad hires, I think you mentioned a little bit earlier, I don't think you used the word cancerous, but you bring in the wrong people, that stuff spreads pretty quick, and you can just kill culture. You can just kill morale, and that stuff spreads like wildfire, right? So you just got to be really clear. I'm hiring this person, and if it's not 100% yes, for me it's a no. Just go back out, find somebody else, because you bring the wrong person. What's that saying? It takes time for bad news to travel uphill. Like if you don't catch it quick, it can wipe out the village.
Yeah, and we've not really sort of spoken much about the importance of culture, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I've had some fantastic salespeople, some real rock stars in the past, but inevitably who can be, you could use that word cancerous, have created that toxic culture, which is absolutely tears down everything that you're trying to achieve. I can remember one of our most successful people, who remained nameless, some time ago, who whenever he used to get paid his quarterly bonus, would very vocally on the sales floor complain about how much income tax he was paying, because he was only so much money. That's not the sort of person that you want on the sales floor. When the chips are down and accounts are moved for strategic reasons on occasion, and people just sort of check out and can become problematic, that's the time that they should be leaving the business. And
100%.
Yeah.
Love this conversation. I thought it'd be good, so we'll definitely have to get you back. Go actually deeper, maybe into a couple of these areas. Maybe we could go really deep into the recruitment piece, because I don't know about you, I see a lot on LinkedIn. Buy my $57 playbook on how to send 10 billion emails out, but we don't see how, here's the playbook for recruiting great people. Here's the playbook for taking somebody that has got the right characteristics, but maybe not the right amount of experience, and how you can actually onboard them, quickly develop them, turn them into an elite salesperson. I just didn't see really much of that when I stepped up, and it probably stalled a lot of my growth, where we need some more of that content. And it sounds like you've got buckets of that to share. So we'd have to get you back on if that's good for you.
Yeah, I'd love to, James. Yeah, more than happy to share my thoughts on that and my experience. It's, as I say, sales is tough. Getting hiring right is tough as well. But I think there are a few things.
And they're both connected, right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I'd highly recommend go follow Bill. You're pretty active on LinkedIn. I see you all of the time. So definitely go follow Bill. And we'll look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Hit Your Numbers podcast.
Marvelous. Thanks for having me on, James. Really enjoyed it.
No worries. See you later.
Okay.
All right, thanks for listening to this episode. I've got something else I want to give you before we wrap up here. So we've built the leading skill optimization platform with 400 plus sales lessons, 12 courses from prospecting all the way through to late stage deal negotiation and more, one-to-one sales coaching and AI sales assistance. And I want to give you 7 days free access to the platform. The reason I want to do this is because nobody gets a degree in B2B sales. And after training and coaching hundreds of sales reps and teams in the last 2 years, most haven't mastered critical selling skills. And it's preventing them from being promoted, earning great money, and building a great career in B2B sales. So go to therevenueenabler.com, grab a free trial, and join hundreds of salespeople that are closing their skill gaps and mastering sales. There's a link in the video description. I'm looking forward to getting you set up. Give me a shout with any questions.